Good afternoon. I hope everyone is well. I'm going to do the second of my weekly Q&A sessions. So what I've done, I've prepared 3 questions that I'm frequently asked and just going to give my answers to those. And then if anyone jumps on live, then they can ask any questions that they have regarding strength training as an older adult. If you're watching the recording of this, then please, again, just use the comments below. Just ask any questions there. And then once I watch this back, I'll have a look through those questions and I will then answer those in the following week. But if you're watching live, then use the chat feature now, ask the questions, and I will cover those. But to start with, I'm going to start with one of the most frequently asked questions that I tend to get is, if I'm going to start strength training, what equipment do I need? And this very much is a question where it depends. So I'll start by just recapping on what we mean by strength training. So if you're working out to try and build muscle strength, you are going to need to push your muscles to the point where they're close to fatigue. And that's ideally going to happen within 15 repetitions of an exercise. Now, for some people, body weight is going to be absolutely fine to do that. And if you find exercise particularly challenging and towards the end, you find that the 14th was quite a challenge and then the 15th was pretty much the last one you could manage, then at this point in time, that is sufficient for that exercise to build muscle strength. Now, if you finish 15 and you felt that actually I could probably done another 5-10 repetitions without much more effort, then you're not working sufficiently hard enough to build any muscle strength. So in order to then build strength, rather than just do more repetitions, you actually want to keep it at 15 repetitions or less and hold a weight or a resistance band, having something to create some resistance so that when you hit the 15th repetition, you're now at a point where you're reaching fatigue. So the equipment you might then want to use is something that has weight to it. Now, that doesn't have to look like gym equipment. That could be a rucksack that you put some bottles of water in, or some heavy books or anything that's got some weight to it. My personal favorites for gym equipment that's not gym equipment is 5 litre bottles of screen wash, because if you fill that up to the top, we know that a litre of water is 1 kilogram. So if you've got a 5 litre bottle there, that's 5 kilograms straight away. The bottles of screen wash generally have a handle as well. So you've got a nice, easy thing to hold. You can have one in each hand. 2 of them fit quite nicely into a rucksack. And then you could even have another 2 if you've got, I tend to have a few of the plastic bottles floating around in my garage. So you can tend to build weight quite quickly without actually having to go out and buy any dumbbells or kettlebells or anything along those lines. If you are going to work out at home, at some point as you progress, you probably are going to want to get something that looks more like it's got a gym equipment. So you can get a set of adjustable dumbbells, fairly inexpensive on Amazon, and they normally go up to about 20 kilograms. They're the kind of ones where you have a weight plate that you kind of slide onto the bar, and it could be a short bar for a dumbbell. Some have the long bar. Some of them even have the ends of the bar screw off, so to create 2 shorter bars you can use for dumbbells, and then you can screw them back on, slide the weight plates on, and then you've got that for a barbell. If you're going to go to a gym, then obviously they have a lot of equipment you have access to. So as well as dumbbells, barbells, kettlebells, things like that have some weight, they also have some cable machines. And the good thing about a cable machine is that it provides resistance in a direction that's different from gravity. So you could have it anchored at shoulder height so that you're pulling it away from where it's kind of anchored to on that cable machine. So now the force is going this way. So you could do something where you're pulling across there, whereas if you're holding a weight, it's only working at an downwards force. So it completely changes the dynamics of the exercise. At home, you can replicate that using a resistance band. So To recap there, what equipment do I need to get started with resistance training? The answer could be, if you're at the very beginnings, you don't need equipment, body weight might be enough. If you're at the next stage, it could just be that you're using heavy things around the house to put in a bag or something that you can kind of grip onto that will create some resistance. If you're working out at home, then I recommend probably the first place you start is some adjustable dumbbells and maybe a resistance band. And then there's more you could get at home, which I won't go to much now, but that could be a barbell and a squat rack maybe potentially. But then once you've kind of got confidence level to a certain degree, the gym is a fantastic option because it's got so much equipment available to you. So again, if you are watching live, feel free to use a chat to ask any questions that you might have regarding strength training. And again, if you are watching the recording, just put it in the comments below and I will read that. And hopefully in the next week or two when I do these, then I will get back to that question. This is something I'm going to try and do every week. The first few weeks, the timings might be a little bit sporadic because I've got a few other commitments, but I'm going to try and settle into a Wednesday lunchtime every week from kind of mid-December onwards. But yeah, the second question that I often get asked is, what are the best exercises to do? And it's a difficult question because there are a countless number of exercises that you could include in a strengthening program. And without sounding like a broken record, the most important part is whatever exercise you do choose, that you're working the muscle sufficiently enough to build strength. So you're trying to hit that fatigue within the 15 repetitions and ideally less than that as you progress. What I then tend to do is, once you've kind of got that principle in mind and you're confident working muscles to fatigue, is I tend to pick what we call compound movements or functional movement patterns. So rather than working individual muscles, we're trying to work whole movements. You're working groups of muscles that are trying to replicate movements that happen on a day-to-day basis, so that you can really kind of see, as you're doing an exercise, you can see how it's going to improve your function as you go through. So there's 7 of these functional movement patterns. And so I'll list those through and then go into a bit more detail. So they're squat, hip hinge, lunge, push, pull, rotation, and gait or carry. So if we look at the squat is that action of sitting down and standing up. So in the gym, you might use hold on to some dumbbells, or you can have a barbell across your back and you're just squatting down, sometimes without anything behind you, and you just stand back up. Sometimes you're actually sitting down to a box or a bench and then get back up from there. But you're trying to use those muscle groups, mainly the thighs and the glutes, to lift you up from that squat position. Hip hinge is slightly differently. So it's what we commonly think of as a deadlift. Is your knees don't bend too much and you're more hinging at the hips and then coming back up again. Lunge is where you're kind of stepping into that lunge position where you're bending both knees to lower the back knee to the floor and then back up. Push is you're pushing yourself away from something. So you might be pushing yourself away from the floor doing a push up, or you're, say, laying on your back and you're pushing the weights away from you. So it's that kind of push motion. Pull is the opposite. So you're pulling something towards you. So again, you could be with a resistance band, pulling that resistance band towards you and back again, or you could be pulling yourself towards a fixed object. So like a pull-up would be that where you're holding the bar and pulling your chest up to the bar and lowering again. Rotation generally refers to as rotation of the body or the trunk. So again, I talked about that cable machine earlier. You might be holding and then pulling it across, rotating the body and twisting and then back again. Or sometimes it's the same muscles are used to fight rotation. So there's an exercise called the pale-off press. So again, if that cable machine was attached here, we pull it across, and then as we're straightening our arms, it's trying to pull us there, but my muscles are fighting that rotation. So we call that an anti-rotation exercise. And then the last one is gait or carry. So that would be holding a weight in one hand or both hands, and you're walking along with that weight. So that might replicate carrying the shopping or lifting a wheelbarrow and pushing that forwards. So just to recap there. So the exercises that I tend to like to bring in when people ask me what the best exercises are, these functional movement patterns or compound lifts that are working multiple muscle groups or muscles at the same time to perform these movements. So that was the squat, the hip hinge, the lunge, push, pull, rotation, or gait and carry. You can, by all means, bring in what we call isolation exercises as well. So they are, rather than working groups of muscles together, they're trying to look at maybe just one specific muscle. So an example of that might be a bicep curl. So you're just really working the biceps. There's not a lot else working at the same time. Same if you're in the gym, you might sit on a knee extension machine where you kick the leg out forwards and then back again. Again, that's generally just focusing on the quads. And these are all great exercises too, and there is no one right answer. The more important thing is, once you've picked the exercises, is that you're going to push your muscles to fatigue. And it's those last few repetitions where your muscles almost have no energy left in them. That's the recovery after that is where they get stronger. So if you got to 15 and you could have done 5, 6, 7, 8 more fairly easily, then you haven't worked hard enough to get stronger. And by all means, you don't need to get to there straight away. You can work at getting your confidence first. And then once you're confident with the movement patterns, then bring it in. But it is the intensity you perform the exercise is more important than the exercises you pick. But if you are going to pick an exercise, I tend to go to those compound movement patterns or those functional movement patterns first. So again, for those of you watching live, feel free to ask any questions in the chat. And if you're on recording, go for the in the comments and I will get back to those. And then the last question that I had prepared for today is, people are often worried about, will it hurt afterwards? So will it hurt if you do strength training in that time afterwards or even during? They're often very conscious of the adverse effects of training, and obviously it's going to put people off. So if you're just starting, then, I mean, yes, strength training has the potential to hurt, and there's two forms of hurt that we might have. So if you are finding that your joints are hurting or any pre-existing pains that you might have, as you're doing strength training, you're finding that it feels like it's flaring something up that you've had before, then we're probably going to need to adapt what we're doing, because if you're flaring up a joint pain or you've got an arthritic knee and that starts to get worse the more you do, then it's going to carry over into everyday life, and it's going to stop you from kind of enjoying your day-to-day things that you do. So it might be that you just lift less weight to start with, get the knee used to doing the exercise, and then build from there. Or it might be that you adapt it. So rather than going into a deep squat, you just work on your shallow squat and add some weight and resistance to that first. And then once you're more comfortable there, you can start to reduce the depth again. If you find that you are in control of that, you're not getting any joint pain or making any sort of pre-existing injuries worse, then once you start getting to the point where you push the muscles to fatigue, you're probably going to find that you get some of the muscles aching afterwards. And it depends on how quickly you progress through the stages to how severe that ache is. And we call that delayed onset muscle soreness, or DOMS. You often hear it referred to. You take the first letter of each word. That is actually a good thing, because it shows that you've pushed your muscles sufficiently enough for them to go into that kind of repair recovery phase, which is where the ache normally kicks in. And it normally starts a day, possibly 2 days after you've trained, and then it normally lasts for a day or two once it started. If you are completely new into it and you go into a really hard workout straight away, you normally find that's a lot more severe, the ache in the muscles, and it might last for quite a lot longer. Again, not a bad thing, but it doesn't need to be severe if we don't need it to be. So again, if we go through that process of build some confidence in the movement patterns first, then gradually start to add a bit of resistance and then get used to training to fatigue, your muscles kind of adapt throughout that process so they don't have that sudden jump up, which is where the severe DOMs come in. Often then, as you do progress at various stages, you'll find that the DOMs may vary in intensity, but normally once you've got started, the first sort of time you push muscles is the worst it is, and then after that it's kind of acclimatized to it and you don't tend to get too much in the way of DOMs. But you might find, I say, if you take a big jump up every now and then, you suddenly get a bit more. Or you add a new exercise in that works the muscles in a slightly different way, then again you might get a bit of aching afterwards. So again, aching in the muscles is not anything I worry about. It can just make things slightly uncomfortable for a couple of days when you're doing your normal day-to-day stuff. So we want to avoid it getting too severe if we can. So yeah, you just progress that by very gradual changes. And that's going to help your joint pain as well if you happen to have any, because if you make big jumps up, the joint might not be ready for it and it might have a sudden flare up. And that is the pain that we do want to avoid, because we don't want to make anything worse. It's already there, or start having swelling or anything along those lines. So when I get that question, will it hurt afterwards? The answer is kind of yes, and some discomfort is actually generally a good thing, but that should be in the muscles, shouldn't be in the joints. And if either joint pain or muscle pain is really severe, then we've probably pushed it a little bit too hard and more than we need to. So we might want to back off a little bit from there. So, like I say, I just wanted to come on with those 3 questions that I had straight away. If you want to make sure that you don't miss the next week's live weekly Q&A, then be sure to subscribe to the channel. So just click subscribe below. If you're on now, then I've got another 30 seconds or so before we finish the stream naturally. So do write with your question in the chat. And then again, if you are watching the replay of this, then I'd love to know what questions you have. So write in the comments, what would you like to know? Anything about starting strength training or an exercise you might be struggling with, anything that you think I might be able to help you with, and I will endeavour to answer that in next week's Q&A or in any of the future ones. Next week, I'm going to a conference on the Wednesday, so it may be slightly a different timing, but I'll update you in the week. So I've just had Lynn in the comments say, how often should we do this? So with strength training, the guidelines are that anyone should be doing at least 2 sessions of muscle strengthening per week. And anyone over 65 should be doing 3 sessions of muscle strengthening per week. So when we're doing a workout, and that workout could last, I don't know, half an hour. It doesn't have to be like an hour, 2 hour long workout that you do. I'd say half an hour is about right, particularly to start with. So that might be kind of 4 or 5 exercises you're working through. So you might want to start with about that 15 repetitions to begin with. So you work through 15 repetitions of an exercise. Then you have a quick break for a minute or 2. And then you go back into another 15 repetitions, minute or 2 rest, and another. So that would be 3 sets of 15 repetitions for each of the exercises you're doing. So that might be 4 or 5 exercises. It's important you do have that little bit of a break in between the sets. So rather than doing 15, having 10 seconds and go straight into another 15, you'll have effectively done one big session of 30 repetitions, which defeats the purpose a little bit, because we want to make sure we hit fatigue, feel tired after 15, need 2 minutes to recover, and then you'll be ready to go again. But yeah, once you've done 3 sets of 15 of your 4 to 5 exercises, you then want at least a day's recovery before you do these again. So if you were aiming for 3 sessions a week, say definitely 2, ideally 3 sessions per week. You would then want a day in between. So I would maybe go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or you could have one where you have got a bit of a couple of days in between. But that would be a good break. But try not to do them consecutively, because the recovery in between sessions is just as important as the sessions themselves. Because if you do them back to back, you almost you're working a fatigue muscle, so there's more chance that it might react and feel sore and then cause a bit of an injury. So you want some recovery in between those. And then Lynn also says, thank you, which exercises would you recommend to improve walking and balance? So a lot of them will help with balance. So there's a strong association with increased muscle strength and improved balance. So sometimes you don't actually have to specifically work on balance itself. But when you are doing the compound movement patterns, so rather than the isolated ones like the bicep curl or a seated exercise where you're kicking the leg forwards, if we're doing the compound ones like a squat or a deadlift or a lunge based exercise, you're on your feet and you're having to kind of adapt to the balance as you go into a squat and come back out of it, or as you're going into a lunge particularly, it's quite hard to challenge the balance side to side. So there's an element of controlling the balance as you're building strength. But like I say, actually building strength will help the balance in itself. The other thing that helps with walking, as I talked about, the gait or carry exercise. So if you're holding a dumbbell or something similar in one hand as you're walking, if it's relatively heavy, you're going to have to, as you kind of, your arms behind you, it's pulling you backwards a little bit. And as you swing that arm forwards with the weight, it's then pulling you forward. So your body's having to adapt. And particularly if you've only got the weight on one side, it's wanting to pull you down to the side. So you're having to kind of engage your core to keep you upright and straight. So the gait carry exercises are the ones that people often don't do, and they really tie into the balance. Ave says we'll have to catch up on this. So the recording now on this same link, the recording will stay on YouTube now, or if you go to the Never Too Old to Lift YouTube channel, you can see there's a tab across the top that says live videos, and then you'll see all the weekly Q&As will be in there. But if you've got any questions right now, feel free to ask away. Good. So we've covered the balance. So I think the questions we covered in this, if you're wondering, Ave, so we asked, what equipment do I need? What are the best exercises? Will it hurt afterwards? And then Lynn's asked, how often should we do strength training? And are there any exercises that I recommend specifically for balance? So I think that will cover it for now. If anyone is looking to learn a little bit more, I've got a free ebook that you can download. I'll put the link in the description below, but you just need to click that link. It will just ask you for your email, and that will send through the ebook for you. And that will guide you on how to build your own 12-week strength training program based on some of those 7 movement patterns that I talked about and different variations that you might want to include, and then putting a workout template of 4 exercises or 5 exercises that you're going to do 3 times in a week. If you prefer something kind of physical in paper, then it's also available as a printed book from Amazon. So you just search Never Too Old to Lift in Amazon and that will come up, or I'll put that link below as well. And then I've also just recently launched an online course called Stronger for Life. So it's all the same kind of idea and principles, but in a more interactive way. And you also get access to me on weekly group sessions that all the members have, where they get to share their progress, ask any questions and sticking points, support the others. And it's become a really nice little community where everyone's kind of progressing through together. And it's nice. So, say the ebook has got everything you need in there, but if you want that more supportive environment and weekly access directly with myself, then Stronger for Life might be something you're interested in. And again, I'll put that link below as well. But for now, I will see you next week, and I will send an email out with the timings for that, because it will be slightly different to this one. But eventually we'll settle into lunchtime on a Wednesday, it being the time that I'm going to try and stick to doing this every week. But for now, make sure you do subscribe to make sure you don't miss any future live streams as we do them. And I will see you next week. Thank you for coming.